Just start. Bismillah walhamdulillah salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala ma ba'd. And that is just the shock, the initial shock that come, and to whom the wahi revelation has come to. Next, we spoke about how the Prophet ﷺ was so small, the community was so small that they were left just to do individual da'wah. Go to that individual, go to that person. It wasn't even publicized yet. I'm not saying it was secret, but it wasn't, the Prophet ﷺ was not tasked with gathering the masses and preaching the message yet. That's where we get to today. So after about 3 years or so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the verse, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Right? وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet ﷺ to now give da'wah to your community. Right? To your community, starting with your relatives, Bani Hashim, and then to the broader communities. And at that moment, the Prophet ﷺ goes on Safa. It's Sa'i. He goes on Safa. Why did he go there? Because it was part of the customs of Mecca that if there's an important news that needs to be heard immediately, the person would go to Safa, stand on Safa and start calling. Oh, tribe so-and-so, Ya Bani Fihr, Ya Bani Makhzum, Ya Bani Hashim, calling them. And it was customary that when somebody does this, a member of each tribe goes to see what's the news. Normally the head, the sheikh of the tribe, if the sheikh is not available, then somebody on their behalf. So the Prophet ﷺ receives a revelation. He goes on Safa, he calls the people gather. And the Prophet ﷺ says, if I were to tell you that an army is behind this mountain coming to attack you, would you believe me? What did they say? Of course we would. You've never lied. We've never caught you lying. The Prophet ﷺ is doing something very important. He is proving to them that when they are about to reject, that it's really an issue of stubbornness and arrogance. Do you believe me? They said yes. So he said, Inni nadhirun lakum bayna yaday adhabin shadid. He said, I am a warner to you, I am a prophet to you before a very difficult day. And then Abu Lahab says what we know he said. تبا لك لسائر هذا اليوم. لهذا جمعتنا. He tells the Prophet, may you perish for the rest of this day. Is this why you gathered us? So notice something here. Abu Lahab already knew this. Like the message isn't new. If the Prophet ﷺ all of a sudden come and said, I'm here to warn you, I'm here as a warner, they would have said, okay, well, what are you warning us of? But they already knew what the Prophet ﷺ was preaching. But they saw that he was doing it privately. In their own homes, they have their own club, so whatever, it's not affecting society. Now at this moment, it's no longer something private. It's no longer something that they do behind closed doors, keep your religion at home, as they say. In the public, it's secular. No, that's gone now. And the leaders of Quraysh understood this immediately. And Abu Lahab says, Tabban lak. May you perish. Right? And from that moment, this is when the harassment begins. This is when the leaders of Quraysh begin to oppress the Muslims. Initially, it starts how? With propaganda, words. And what's very interesting is that in the Quran, I don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly addressing oppression. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses it through stories. The primary story being the story of Fir'aun and Musa alayhi salam. So here in Surah Ghafir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He sent Musa to Fir'aun, wa Haman, wa Qarun. Right? And the first response that they had to Musa was, فَقَالُوا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. That was the initial response. Musa alayhi salam goes to Fir'aun and he says, I am a messenger of Allah to you. Worship Allah alone. Stop punishing the children of Israel, let them come with me and we're out. The first response of Fir'aun is propaganda, smearing the image and the reputation of those who carry the message. Now, the point of this series is to see how what we are going through today is similar, if not exactly the same, as what the Prophet ﷺ went through. And so this isn't a entire seerah course where it's every single detail and every single event, rather selecting the events that really resonate with us today. When we American Muslims, when you all first came here and you had your masajid and we kind of just stayed behind closed doors. Remember that era? You kind of go to the masjid, you want to create a little Palestine, a little Syria, a little this, and we don't really deal with the outside world. We don't really deal with the non-Muslims. We're just kind of by ourselves, right? During that phase, was there really any harassment of Muslims? Not really. It tended to be what? Maybe one person says something, you all go back to your country or something like that. But a propaganda effort to humiliate or to smear the Muslims, that wasn't really going on. September 11 happens, and that changes everything. Now Islam is forced into the public scene, is forced to actually deal with non-Muslims. And now this is when you have the millions, but rather the billions upon billions of dollars being funneled into Islamophobia. This campaign to make Islam and Muslims seem terrible. That's how it began. And that's what we still witness today. So it starts like this. With the Prophet ﷺ, they would say he's a sahir, he's a sorcerer, he's a liar, he's an insane person, he's a poet, he's these type of smear campaigns. That doesn't go far. People are still accepting Islam. They go to the next phase, as you see in these verses. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ مِنْ عِنْدِنَا قَالُوا اقْتُلُوا أَبْنَاءَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ وَاسْتَحْيُوا نِسَاءَهُم. They escalate. Now it's physical. Propaganda isn't working. Propaganda isn't slowing down the da'wah. Now we're going to be a little bit more direct. We're going to come after you. We're going to start torturing. And that's exactly what happens to the companions. They start going after the weaker of the companions, like Bilal, like Al-Khabbab, like the younger, like the companions from the poorer tribes and less noble tribes. They start torturing them, harassing them. Ammar ibn Yasir, his father and mother are killed. And we all know what happens in these stories. They escalate it. And they keep doing that in hopes that they will leave the faith. They will stop. It won't continue. But the problem is it continues. As you see in these verses, right? وَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ دَرُونِي أَقْتُلْ مُوسَى وَلْيَدْعُ رَبَّهُ إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَنْ يُبَدِّلَ دِينَكُمْ أَوْ أَنْ يُظْهِرَ فِي الْأَرْضِ الْفَسَادِ. It keeps escalating into something else. Same thing with Quraysh. Next, once they saw that harassment wasn't working, they go into negotiations. Negotiations. إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَنْ يُبَدِّلَ دِينَكُمْ. I'm afraid that he's going to, change your ways. Let's see if we can negotiate. They try going to the Prophet, let's negotiate. Doesn't get anywhere. They go to Abu Talib, negotiate. It doesn't get anywhere. And what you find in the Muslim American community, although we haven't really endured any direct torture and harassment, and aside from words, but what you do find is an attempt to negotiate. They want you to negotiate. It is impossible. It is impossible for a Muslim in politics to be part of either party, especially the left, the Democratic Party, without them having to give up at least publicly, some of their positions. So for Democrats, it has to be LGBT. If you want to be the Democratic Party, you have to somehow, some way say that, you're okay with this. You have to go to their parties and their rallies. There's a negotiation attempt that happens, right? And this is where we Muslims really need to put our eyes on today. To what extent are we willing to negotiate our faith? Because once push comes to shove, they must feel that we see our religion as secondary, and that our culture that we live in America is primary, right? Notice it in news interviews. We see it with Gaza and those who are pro-Palestinian, and what about Hamas, and what about Hamas, and what about this, and what about that. It's always an attempt to get you, Muslims, to be on the defensive and to negotiate according to their terms. And this is a very difficult position to be in, very difficult. And the Muslims, they find themselves in this scenario. What do we do? What do we negotiate? How do we? And the Prophet, ﷺ, at least he was leading them, showing that we're not going to negotiate. The famous statement, he tells his uncle, if you were to put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, right? You were to give me the sun and the moon, I'm not going to change. I can't change. This is Allah's religion, and Allah's religion is going to take its course. It's going to happen with or without me. So what we need to do today as American Muslims is to understand what are the issues that we will never budge in. Of course, it comes to our aqidah, what we believe in. Of course, our ethics and our morals. Of course, our actions, salah, zakah, etc. These things are red lines. And it needs to be made clear to our community that these are things we never negotiate. It's never going to change. And subhanAllah, what you find, studies show that children, teenagers, they often give this persona, this image, this message that I want to be free. I want to be able to do what I want. And they get mad at their parents for putting rules on top of them. And it seems like they are more in favor of parents who are looser. But studies actually show children, youth, teenagers, they appreciate more when the rules are clear and the rules are enforced. They actually appreciate that more. They feel more self-esteem. They feel more empowered when they know what is right and what is wrong. Although they are showing something else, in all actuality, what they're looking for is that firmness, that clearness. Let's put it that way. So when we Muslims engage a broader society, what you find over and over and over and over again is that the average American, when they see the unwavering commitment of Muslims, they appreciate that and they respect that. And they understand that these Muslims or atheism is just kind of this fluid ideology that changes based on the desires of mankind. So when they see Muslims and their unwavering commitment to their aqidah, to their beliefs, to their actions, to their practices, it sends a message. And that message is we true in what we preach. And here we start getting into the wisdom as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows Muslims, the believers, his awliya, to go through such circumstances. I mean, put yourself in the following situation. You have a close friend who's being harassed, who's being bullied, who's being attacked. Wouldn't you help that person? You would. So why doesn't Allah help the ones he calls his awliya? It's a very, interesting question, and a question that a lot of people struggle with. Now, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, and why am I going through this? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to that and says, Alif Lam Mim, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do you think that you're just going to say, I believe, and you're not going to be tested? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you to be tested. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم. He created life, he created death and life to test you. Right? إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتلي. We created the human being, and you're going to be tested. And it's something about being tested, being in a difficulty that is integral to your growth and to the da'wah itself. Had it not been for the tremendous pressures that we Muslims have been enduring for the past 23 years, since 9/11, for the past 23 years, would we have grown the growth that we have witnessed? The answer is definitely no. We would have been behind closed doors as we were doing before. Why not? It's comfortable, it's safe, right? It's not scary. But we grow. Had it not been for the Islamophobes, people constantly harassing Muslims, we wouldn't get the platform or as big of a platform to show our stance and show our positions. Now, had it not been for somebody like Robert Spencer, who's a career Islamophobe, spent the past 33 decades of his life, wrote like 15 books just simply bashing Islam, you wouldn't have moments where that individuals brought in front of the entire world to debate a Muslim only to be crushed by that Muslim. That's very sweet and very satisfying. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests so that we grow. It's part of our growth. Also, it's part of instilling that iman. You know, when Abu Sufyan was talking to Herakl, when he was in Damascus, one of the things that Herakl asked Abu Sufyan is, do these people leave their faith out of anger? And Abu Sufyan said, no, they don't. And it shows you what? This isn't a commitment that's based on desires. If it's just based on desires, you're not getting your desire, you leave it for something else. That's human nature. So the fact that these people are willing to endure the difficulties, the torment, the harassment, and yet they don't leave shows that they truly believe in this. Right? So we Muslims, as we engage the Islamophobic realm, we have to keep things into perspective. That who we are really clashing with is a small portion of the society. The elites, the Fir'auns, the Hamans, the Qaruns of America, of the West, of the globe today. And the vast majority of human beings are just watching. Just like in Arabia, most tribes in Arabia were neutral towards the Prophet ﷺ. They weren't waging war against him. They were neutral. And they were observing, they were watching, what's going on here? And so when they see the believers, their steadfastness, their holding on to the faith, their ability to persevere, their resilience, their increasing strength, that sends a message. Hence, in the end, all of Arabia accepted Islam. That doesn't come out of nowhere, it doesn't come out of a void, right? So an oppressed ummah is not an ummah we want to be. We want to be an ummah of strength, where we have the power, the resources, the ability, the strategies to be able to create a system, a world that really reflects justice in our or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's adil and his rahmah, his justice and his mercy. But as soon as we begin to preach that, we touch on a very sensitive chord, and that is the already existing hierarchy. And in any hierarchy, there are those on the top, like Fir'aun, Qarun, Haman, like Abu Lahab, like Abu Jahl, like whoever else was, right? Utbah and Walid al-Mughira and these people. As soon as the Prophet comes with his message, any messenger comes with a message, it's actually quite astonishing how predictable the reaction always is. It's always the same reaction. Look at all the stories of the prophets who gave da'wah. The reaction of the people is exactly the same. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. It's the same exact reaction. And it's always from the same class of people, the elites. So we, as we navigate our challenges, we need to understand, well, number one, the way they will try and attack us. Starts with propaganda, followed by harassment, like physical harassment, followed by negotiations, followed by increased harassment. We'll get to that next time when they do the boycotts. Why they do this, right, is because in their mind, the Prophet, the messengers, are presenting an ideology, a worldview, where they, the elites, will not be elites, at least in their mindsets. They will not be elites. Now, that's wrong, because the Prophet, ﷺ, when he sent the letters to the kings of the world, like Heraclius, he says, if you accept this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will secure your mulk. He will secure your kingdom. He will empower your kingdom. You're not going to become poorer. You're not going to become less powerful because you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quite the contrary. You will become more powerful. You will be rewarded for that. But in their mindset, they are only up where they are because the system puts them there, right? So the elites always try and secure their status. They always want to be on top, and so they start manipulating the system to ensure that they always stay on top. We see this happening in America, by the way. And this is happening in America. The elites want to stay in that status. And so they manipulate the system to make sure that they and their kids always remain there. So that's why it's so sensitive to them. It's always the mala, وقال الملأ, وقال الملأ, the elites, the elites, the elites. So we need to have the insight, the perspective, the wisdom to be able to understand what's really going on, why they say what they say, so that we don't get overtaken by our emotions and we don't get distracted by the fluff and the propaganda. We understand that the fact that they are attacking us means they are threatened by us. Why would they be threatened by us other than the fact that they see that it's actually working, that it actually has a grasp, a hold? So notice, Fir'aun, Musa said, give me the children of Israel. We're out of here. We're leaving. You know how here in this country they say, just get out of our country, go back home. We don't want immigrants. We don't want, okay, we're going to leave. Let's see how they react when we actually say, let's leave. Fir'aun, nope, you can't leave. Why? Let us go. You hate us. We serve no role, right? You always call us these gangsters and these criminals, and you always call us violent. You make the society worse. And we're leaving. Nope, you can't leave. What was his deal? It's actually quite obvious. He understood that Musa's message was an ideology, and it's an ideology that is attractive to the average individual. If Musa has the freedom to preach freely, he will gain massive influence. And Fir'aun's ideology will diminish. And with that, his own power will diminish. Another example in modern times. Apparently, in June, all the American embassies across the world raised the rainbow flag. So if you're in Amman, apparently in June, you go to Amman, you go to Shara Umayyad, the Umayyad street where the American embassy is. You have these people walking, they see a rainbow flag, like, what is that? They have no idea what it is. But why do they do it? Why do they so much insist on LGBT? Look what happened in the World Cup. Yeah, what's your deal? You'll even have conservatives, Republicans, bashing, these places. Oh, you don't have your freedoms. You don't have. What are you really doing? What they're trying to do is to continue to influence ideology. That's what it is. LGBT is nothing more than an ideological tool for the West to maintain their dominance in the world. That's what it is. Do you really think they care about rights of what people do behind closed doors? You really think that's what it is? These are politicians. Their number one role is to secure their power and to increase it. All politicians are this way, right? So, ideological dominance is key. The prophets come with an ideology, and the elites have a very quick reaction to it. The answer is because they want to make sure their own ideology dominates, because with that, people are dominated, right? So continuing, when an ummah is oppressed, look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says next. وَقَالَ رَجُلٌ مُؤْمِنٌ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَكْتُمُ إِيمَانَهُ أَتَقْتُلُونَ رَجُلًا أَن يَقُولَ رَبِّيَ اللَّهُ. This individual is called Mu'min al-Fir'aun, the believer from amongst the family of Fir'aun. We don't know how he's related to Fir'aun, but what we know is that this is a man who was in the closed quarters of Fir'aun. Like, he was in the in group, really close. This is the person who had easy access to Fir'aun. And he must have been from a very powerful tribe, a tribe that if they revolt against Fir'aun, it's going to cause them big problems, right? So Fir'aun couldn't do anything to him. And this individual also understood that, Fir'aun can kill me in the end, right? He still has power. So he never publicized his iman to the masses of the people. But clearly, the politicians and the elites within Fir'aun's quarters knew that this person's a believer. And so you have this very beautiful conversation that he gives, that he has, the dawah that he gives. Now, what I want to point out here is, as we Muslims struggle dealing with these powerful individuals, always remember Mu'min al-Fir'aun. Because in every time, you will find people like this individual who conceal their iman but are working in favor of believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plants them there. Even what's going on with Palestine now, it is amazing how many secret letters and secret messages from anonymous individuals are coming to the Muslim leaders telling them, hey, so-and-so is going to be there, go protest there. So-and-so is about to release this letter, counter it with this. We have people on the inside helping the Muslim cause. Just like there was somebody on the inside helping Musa alayhi salam. And even one of the shuyukh in the UK said that there's somebody in the close quarters, one of the ministers, who's actually a Muslim. He says, I am a Muslim, I'm a minister, but I can't publicize my iman. Right? And he's trying to work in favor of the believers. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving assistance. So as we look and we deal with the problems, we might feel like there's this overpowering wave coming to drown us. But in all reality, within that wave are individuals who are working in our favor. So what we need to do is to stay on task, to have a mission, to have a role, to play that role, to understand that we have our responsibilities, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will assist us in ways we will not come to find except maybe after the fact, or maybe even Yawm al-Qiyamah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals all the secrets, right? So the Prophet ﷺ was once an oppressed, the companions were once an oppressed people. And I'll conclude with the following. We'll keep it a little bit short today. I'll conclude with the following. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting next to the Kaaba, in the shade of the Kaaba, with his back leaning on the Kaaba. And Khabbab goes to the Prophet. And Khabbab, as I believe I mentioned last time, was one of the, if not the most tortured companion in Mecca. He goes to the Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, ud'u Allah lana. Just make dua for us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will alleviate the suffering. And the Prophet ﷺ, what did he tell him? Ya Khabbab, the people before you would be taken and split in half. Their skin would be peeled from their flesh, and they would not leave their faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring victory to the religion because He promised it. And so we today, right, we need to reflect on this very carefully. Every time a difficulty comes to the Muslims in America, the first thought on our minds is, I want to leave. I want to leave. I want to leave. If you have somewhere to go, more power to you. There's nothing haram about it. But we need to keep the right mindset, right? We have the opportunity to deal with these situations. And when we do that, the reward is tremendous. Not only do we get the reward of the mujahada, of the striving, we get the reward of the stability we create for the future generations. Because our efforts today are seeds being planted, or is water planting the seeds or watering the seeds that have already been planted by the previous generation to create a better ummah, a more stable ummah, a more peaceful, an ummah with more peace, with more justice, with more rahmah that we can enjoy, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. You get the reward of all those people. Remember, 700-800 years ago, the Crusaders were wreaking havoc in the Muslim world. The Mongols were wreaking havoc in this Muslim world. The same places that we see today, going through a lot of distress and a lot of turmoil. The same places. And people came and they pushed back. They dealt with those situations. You have heroes coming, like Ibn Taymiyyah, like Salahuddin, like Nuruddin, like among many others that we know and we revere and we talk about today. Look at Libya. Look at Aljazair. Umar al-Mukhtar and all these other people. It costed them a lot. But now we praise them, we love them, and we say that these people are just people we wish we could be like. So an ummah that is being oppressed is an ummah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing to be leaders. As Surah Al-Qasas begins, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَّمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sees the believers being oppressed, then that oppression is the first sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make these individuals a'imma, leaders, inheritors of the land. So it is what it is. Nobody likes it. But we find ourselves here. Allah's qadar has put us in this place. Might as well make the best of it. And always reflect on the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was once in the same shoes that you're in today. He was bullied, he was harassed, he was called names, he was smeared, he was attacked, among other things. So we are like the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah's promise is haqq. If we work the way the companions work, then we will see similar results بإذن ta'ala. So I'll go ahead and stop there. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.